Welcome to the View from the Stands podcast. Here I am Cameron, along with Taylor. Just going to talk about some things going on in the NFL. We've got, obviously, the Combine happened about a week ago, and some big things are happening with that. And then we've got the NFL Draft coming up in about 5 to 6 weeks. So some big things that are influencing that with free agency. And then we're also going to go over the AFC South and figure out what are things that each team needs to address within the draft and within free agency and kind of where we think things are going to go. So, Taylor, what do you think?
Ball rolling. Yeah, episode 1, season 1, take 1.
Hopefully the first of many.
That's how it's going to go, yeah.
So,
excited to do it.
Yeah, that's right. So the first thing, obviously, that everybody's been talking about with the Combine is Saquon Barkley. I mean,
yes.
Dude's a freak.
That's undeniable at this point.
I mean, runs a 4.4 on his second attempt as he stumbles within his first 5 yards. I mean, to think that the kid runs a 4.4 after stumbling, it's just unheard of. I mean...
and at 223, I think is what he weighed in at the draft, too, which is borderline linebacker status there. To be able to run that type of speed is something you don't find every day.
Well, not only that, too, but if you look at what he did in his position drills, his quickness was, I mean, the only guys that seemed to have any type of quickness near his were guys like, I can't pronounce his name, but the running back from NC State who ran, like a 4.3, he ran a sub 4.4. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but other than him, I mean, nobody really challenged his change of direction speed either. I mean, it's just, people are saying, that he's going to be this back that you can kind of compare to Le'Veon Bell due to his ability to be a running back 1 and a number 2 wide receiver. And it's pretty crazy to think that this kid is, I mean, he's the future of running backs in my opinion. This is what all running backs are going to have to be if they want to stay on the field, because with the evolution of the NFL and the passing game, you can't just be a bruiser like a Bo Scarborough, for example. You've got to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Otherwise, you're getting
pass protect.
Yeah, you're getting 2 downs every first and second down, and if you can't stay on the field for third down, you're not getting paid as much.
Yeah, I agree. I think he checks all the boxes. I think that over the last couple of drafts, you've seen the importance or what level of importance a big-time running back can do to your game. You look back last year or year before last, look at Zeke Elliott. This year you're looking at 2 or 3 guys who made huge impacts. You're looking at Kamara. You're looking at Fournette. You're looking at left me on top of Dalvin Cook until he went down. Those guys were difference makers right out of the get. And so these teams that are in need of some explosive, big play guys, this is the guy that you couldn't make in a lab. He's a guy that you dream of.
Well, not only those guys that you mentioned, but also you got Kareem Hunt last year, who took the league by storm.
Led the league, in rushing for the majority of the season until he tapered off at the end. But running backs have become a commodity to have in the early rounds. They just one of those things. This year's draft class, although is fairly loaded with running backs, that being said, the gap between a Saquon Barkley and a Darius Geis or a Kerryon Johnson, I still feel is a pretty sizable difference between that level of athletes.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you've got other great running backs. For example, you got Ronald Jones out of USC, who is also one of those guys who they were, projecting could be a first-round pick because, I mean, he pulled his hamstring about 20 yards into his 40, and he still ran a 4.66. He's got breakaway speed that you saw in his bowl game. I mean, the kid's a freak too, but even seeing that, he's nothing compared to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is just in a league of his own, like you said, and not only did he do all those things physically with his vert being, a 40-inch vert, But he also just, I mean, from every report you hear coming out of the combine, he checks all the boxes from a character standpoint as well. He's a guy that's going to change cultures in locker rooms. I mean, most players, when asked about the Browns, aren't going to be nearly as emphatic as he was, but he is willing to go anywhere because he knows that he can make a difference, and that's kind of what he did. I mean, obviously, he didn't want to come right out of school because of his commitment to Penn State and his desire and his goal that he had made before, his years at Penn State, that he wanted to win a national championship. So it just kind of shows you the kid's not only a freak athlete, but you're not going to worry about him like some of these other backs, with regards to work ethic, with regards to character. I mean, he literally does check all the boxes that you could want from a guy who's going to be probably a cornerstone of your offense and a cornerstone of your franchise for years to come.
Hard to argue.
Well, I mean, everybody knows Saquon is kind of up there, and it'll be curious to see. I know with some of the trades that the Browns have made, there's kind of been some doubt cast into kind of where they'll go with that first pick and with that fourth pick. But before we kind of get into that, some of the other players that we've kind of been impressed by, and most of the people in NFL fans in general, and even people just of everyday life that see it on social media, is Shaquem Griffin from UCF. Kid, I mean, running a 4.38 as a 225-pound linebacker. We talked about Saquon Barkley being a freak for running that fast at 223. I mean, this kid it's crazy.
Inspirational. I mean, that's a great way to put it. The kid obviously he comes from a humble beginning, based on the obvious reasons due to him not having that full arm on that left hand, and it's amazing to see what he's able to accomplish in such a competitive league. Division I sports is the highest of the highs, the cream of the crop, and so for him to be able to shine beyond that and make it to the Senior Bowl appearance and get an invite to the Combine and continue to shine is something that you can't make a movie about. I mean, this is just a great story.
Well, and not only that, you think about a guy like, I mean, people are trying to say, well, he's got one hand that kind of puts him at a disability, different types of things like that. Like, watching him in the Combine, his ability to catch the ball was surprisingly, proficient. I mean, he obviously...
to be honest, yeah. I mean, it really was. I mean, you're sitting here thinking, this guy's got one arm. They're talking about the possibility of him playing at safety due to the speed and the fairly undersized size of a inside linebacker in the NFL. They'd like to be, around that 250 range. He's a little less. He's more around the 235. But the speed would put him into that category as a possible safety option. And for any other linebacker, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't think twice about it. You'd be like, yeah, that guy could do that. But seeing that this guy has an arm, the initial thought is, well, safety, what's he going to do? Just bat the ball down the whole time? I mean, the guy can actually, like you say, make use of it and genuinely catch the ball, which was amazing to watch as well in the Combine. Just a gamer. I don't think you can even put to words or to a stat or a drill to what he brings to a team.
Well, like you said, I mean, looking at him, people say, "Oh, he played in the American Conference. He didn't play against these big schools, these Power 5 schools." But you look at what he did in the bowl game against Auburn, and the kid was all over the field. He made plays everywhere. He had over 10 tackles, multiple sacks. I mean, everywhere the ball was, you would see this kid. He's got a motor that doesn't stop. I mean, all those kind of buzzwords that coaches throw out, and a lot of people, I think, going into the Combine, one thought he was a snub for not getting invited until the very end, but before most teams, I feel, saw him as a guy who would contribute on special teams, but might not see the field, as through the the defense and things like that. But I think, judging by some of the reactions of NFL players and judging by some of the buzz coming out of the Combine, I think like you said, this kid isn't just a special teams player. He's going to make an impact. I think you can put him at some type of hybrid safety linebacker, kind of like what the Browns are looking to do with Jabril Peppers. But I think also in sub packages, I think he's a great rush on the edge. I mean, I think the kid's got the speed to dip around those tackles, and he's got the motor, like I said, to just get to the quarterback and not stop. So it'll be interesting, and as well to see. I think one thing that'll really influence his time on the field is the ability to cover linebackers cover running backs and tight ends out of the backfield. That's just a huge thing now in the NFL. So if he can prove his prowess on doing that, I think he'll definitely start to see the field at least on third downs, and then kind of work himself into a more of a 3-down linebacker or safety. But I mean, like you said, kid's inspirational. There's no doubt about it. And listening to him on all the interviews he's been doing on some of these bigger name shows, the Dan Patrick show, the Rich Eisen show, the kid is just as humble as can be, and he is willing to work and just prove people wrong, because that's what he's had to do his whole life.
Oh yeah. I think going into the draft there might have been questions, or going into the combine there might have been questions as to what this what his chance, or what kind of opportunity he would have to play in the NFL. That could have been questioned, but I think after his showing at the combine, there's no doubt that he deserves a chance on a roster in this league to be able to show the talents that he has, because there's no doubt he can compete with the guys coming in this class with him. So,
well, not only
it's great.
Yeah, and not only that, too. I mean, people think about it and say, all the disadvantages he may or may not have by only having that one hand. But, I mean, somebody that people forget is Jim Abbott, the Major League pitcher that only had one hand. And, I mean, you think about a sport and a position within a specific sport where you need both hands. And, I mean, I couldn't think of a better one than a pitcher. I mean, he's got to throw the ball, and then he's got to switch his glove over. I mean, he's got to do all these different things so he can even just catch the ball as the catcher returns it to him. And this guy threw a no-hitter. So, I mean, a lot of times people want to look and put kind of limitations on him just because of that physical disability that he has. But, I mean, he's not looking for anybody's pity, and he's out to show people that basically anything somebody else can do with two hands, he can do better with one. So, just a really cool story. And I think this kid, I think he's moved himself up into he could be a second-day pick. I could see him going somewhere in the third round. If he doesn't go in the third round, I'd be surprised if he's on the board after the end of the fourth. I mean, that kid, he's just that good. He's the guy that will, if anything, like I said, he's going to make plays on special teams. He's going to, be great in coverage. He's going to force fumbles. I mean, I guess I'm not going to doubt the kid. I mean, he's proved me wrong at every step. So.
Yeah, it's hard to, and it may second day is a little high. I see maybe a fourth to fifth round stock somewhere there, but I agree with you that the kid can definitely play, and he will make an impact. I think whoever gets him in that spot will end up with a player that will provide some stability to their special teams right off the get. And you know how the NFL is. Injuries are a common occurrence, so who knows if he doesn't take on a bigger role come middle of the season after he gets his feet wet. So. Yeah,
for sure. So now let's kind of transition here into the big talk, Taylor. So obviously with the Combine and all these teams, especially with how the league is going, as a pass-happy league, there's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft, and there's a lot of debate, and people, you ask one person, they're going to tell you Sam Darnold's the number one quarterback. You'll ask somebody else, they'll say Josh Allen. You ask somebody else, they'll say Josh Rosen. I mean, there are other people that are saying Baker Mayfield at one. It's crazy to see the variance between all these different people saying who the number one quarterback is, and I don't know. It kind of, I feel like you can look at it from a positive, but I also look at it as a reason to be wary, because you don't have a guy that's really pulling away at that number one spot as a quarterback that's saying, that's having everybody say, hands down, this is the guy to go with, whether it's physical abilities, whether it's tape, and just the
So you're telling me if the Browns blow it again, that this time that it could be something that everybody would have blown, since there's no, leads out favorite. So the Browns, if they blow it, it may be a genuine mistake.
I mean, it's hard to blame to say the Browns are making accidental mistakes.
They're usually good at taking that one quarterback off the board to save everybody else. Like kind of like diving on a grenade at a bar. They're just saving the rest of the teams from drafting this bust, the Deshaun Kaiser. How in the hell did they get somebody to take him in a trade? You couldn't give me Deshaun Kaiser and take Cap away from my team. I mean, I know he's only been in the league 1 year and all this, but the kid, he's out drinking before the games. He doesn't have his mind right. If you're a rookie of the league, you're supposed to be learning. You're like a baby. You learn the most in your first couple years of the league. And for him to be not taking it serious like that just, again, proves the Browns in that general office ability, which, hopefully it looks to be changing. But I don't know. You can't really give him the benefit of the doubt at this point.
Well, the thing, too, is I don't know. I mean, with the trade they made recently for Tyrod Taylor, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that number 1 pick. If they, in my opinion, I don't know. It's hard because, like I said, there isn't that quarterback that's really distinguishing themselves. And for the most part, you look at who's picking beneath you. You've got 2 other teams that are picking between you and that 4th pick in the Giants and the Colts. Obviously, the Colts feel like they've got their franchise quarterback in Andrew Luck, and so they're not looking to pick up anybody anytime soon. So the only question is somebody going to trade up? And are you worried about that? And are you worried that the Giants are going to take a quarterback that you really want? So I don't know. If depending on how things shape up, I would be extremely surprised if the Browns don't take a quarterback at 4. I think at that number 1 slot.
Disagree.
Really?
I disagree. I think that Tyrod Taylor, being that he is still young in his career, I want to say that he's to check on this. I want to say he's about 28 years old. He's still young for a quarterback. He's got the legs. He's got the ability to get this team pointed in the right direction. The turnaround is not going to be a Jaguar-style turnaround for this team. They just don't have the amount of athletes and pieces in place to be able to do what a team like Jacksonville was able to do after just a few years. The Browns it's going to take a while. So they right now are really just trying to stop the bleeding before they even perform surgery to this whole organization. It's going to be a process, but I see a Tyrod Taylor being able to manage the offense. I'm not a huge fan of that in the quarterback terms, but I think he can run that offense and provide some direction for the team and for some of these younger athletes that they can bring in to kind of show their talents, because he's not going to beat you with his arm. He's going to kind of use his athleticism to nickel and dime you. And with a wide receiver like a Landry and a Josh Gordon, guys like that, a Duke Crowell out of the backfield, you're going to see these athletes just getting the ball in space and letting them work. So the importance level to me for a quarterback on a team like that can throw the ball downfield and that has the pocket presence of a Brady or a Breeze or a Manning, it is not going to be necessary. You're going to need a guy with more athleticism like a Tyrod Taylor. So I think you're going to see the quarterback there for the Browns for the next few years as they bring up a young pup in the system and let him learn. So probably look into next year or the year after, the Browns going the quarterback route. I see them going running back in the first round with the obvious number 1 overall choice. And if they don't, it's a shame.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I know reports are saying, and by the way, it's Duke Johnson and Isaiah Crowell. You kind of merged the 2 of them together, so you made a hybrid back out of there. So,
I think Duke Crowell.
Yeah, you said Duke Crowell, but we'll give you a pass
Duke
on
Johnson.
that one.
Yeah, we'll give me some credit there. Crowell mistake there. Apologies.
Yeah, I mean, the running backs on the Browns, and I think that's more than most people could say. So,
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, though. I mean, jeez. That tells you where my fantasy dollars went this year.
I was about to say.
Duke Johnson, shouts out, except for the fact that you showed up 25% of the time. But, it is what it is. I'll send you my invoice.
So it's interesting, though, to think, though, because you're right. Tyrod Taylor will be 29 before the season starts. Right now he is 28, but he's got 1 year left on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. So the Browns...
Right now, he's scheduled to make this year, was looking at that earlier. Tyrod, he's still got 2 years left on his contract. I doubt they'll be able to restructure anything before the beginning of the season. But that being said, I still believe that he could be a big part of that offense and really, really keep them from completely derailing with these athletes that they're bringing in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my opinion, word around the block is that they're going to look for that quarterback either at 1 or 4, and I disagree with that idea as well. I think you've got Tyrod Taylor. There's no point either. I say you take Barkley with number 1. He's the best player in the draft by a long shot. He's a guy that's going to make your offense that much more potent. Like you said, mixing him in with Jarvis Landry and a guy like Josh Gordon, if he can keep his head on. I mean, Josh Gordon's a freak. You look at the numbers he's put up with some of the crappy quarterbacks he's had.
No doubt.
So, I mean, you give him a quarterback who, granted, like you said, he's not a game changer, but he's not Blake Bortles. We'll throw some shade at Blake Bortles.
Bortles in his contract extension there, making 17.5 mil a year. I mean, jeez.
You could pay me.
Shade at him. We'll get Jarrell Casey on here to throw some more shade at him. I mean, it's just, yeah. You know what you get when you get a guy like that.
Yeah. So basically, with a guy like Tyrod Taylor, who's proven himself, he made the playoffs this last year with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, I think the Browns' offense, if they get Saquon Barkley and if they can get Joe Thomas to stay, obviously he's considering retirement, they can shore up that offensive line. They've got weapons on offense. And they played fairly well defensively there. Their defense kept them in a lot of games this year. So, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about it being a long time before that team starts to really make some headway. But maybe before they're in serious title contention. But they can win,
Oh, no doubt.
a decent number of games.
I mean, their number 1 pick from last year, Myles Garrett, he didn't even play until, I want to say, around week 6, week 8 of this past season, and made an impact instantly. The guy, there's another guy that hasn't been able to perform due to injuries, and he's young. He's on the back end of the defense. You also got Jabril Peppers over there. You got some veterans in the secondary too, along with the McCourties, and also the Jamie Collins pickup from New England at middle linebacker. You throw those in, you got 3 or 4 pieces there, at each level of the defense. They're going to compete. I think the AFC North is going to be not looking forward to walking into Cleveland to play the Browns this year. It's going to be a total new look team, and they're not going to be a pushover as it's been since everybody and their mother can remember.
Well, and the thing is, if they underperform this year with all the weapons they've got on offense and Hugh Jackson being a quarterback guy and all that kind of stuff, if they underperform, he's in trouble.
If Hugh Jackson is holding on by a thread, it's an invisible thread. I don't know how the guy has managed to do what he's done and still stay in a job in today's NFL. The guy deserves an award. I think it's utterly amazing to be honest. I don't even know what to say. Actually, I do know what to say. It's Bill Haslam, and then we'll just leave it at that. I mean, the guy is a joke. This is coming from a UT fan. I'm not going to dive into that because I can sit here and rant about him. But the crook, Bill Haslam, he knows one thing, and that's fraud. It seems like. We'll go ahead and throw that out there. So the Browns ownership is a huge part of it, but these moves they're making are the right moves. That being said, so we'll move on from there.
Yeah.
We'll refrain from any further Bill Haslam discussions.
Yeah, let's keep politics out of this. Yeah, Rocky Top, I guess. So, Yeah, it's interesting to see. I'm really curious to see with all these trades that the Browns have made. I mean, like I said, they've made some huge progress, but only time will tell, right? I mean, they got to put it all together. They've got the pieces, I feel, and in that draft,
Yeah.
in that number
Let's
4
not
spot.
talk about the Browns. We're done with the Browns, but I agree with you. The Browns, they deserve this much talking about. It's only to be insulting them. So
Well,
let's refrain from the Browns talk.
yeah, we made a bit of a sidetrack there. So before we
I know, right?
kind
The Browns done got us off track. They're just screwing us over again. The Browns, see, again, nobody likes the Browns. All right. We're losing viewers by the second.
Yeah, we're really alienating ourselves. I think some people are kind of feeling bad for him at this point. But back to the draft, or back to the combine. Some guys, and we'll kind of brush over these fairly quickly. There's a lot of articles and different types of things like this out, but some guys that we kind of feel have really helped their draft stock.
Yep.
Obviously, the guys that we mentioned before with Saquon Barkley and Shaquem Griffin. Some other names that people have kind of been expecting to be breakouts anyways, or Bradley Chubb, out of NC State. Just had some great measurables, great work in the drills, all that kind of stuff at the combine. I mean, the kid, if he doesn't go top 3, I'd be extremely surprised.
Oh, yeah, he's the guy you trade up for.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. He leaps bounds and, a mile ahead of the next edge rusher in this draft. Just physically, he's a specimen.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because I think most teams that are trading up, there aren't a lot of standout tackles. There aren't a lot of standout, which will help, honestly, some of these other guys.
Which would be a mistake, in my opinion. But, a season to the side.
So some other guys with regards to the interior of the offensive line. I mean, you've got great guards like Quentin.
Yes, on a level of his own, which we didn't talk much about him earlier, but the tape on the guy is something to behold. He type caliber. He's the package. He is what
Play guy for sure.
Oh yeah, he's a guy you take into a street fight with you. He's a guy that you do what it takes to help his team out. I think you've seen that through him. You can see that is a part of that guy's
will go out and he will put it all on the line. He is, as you said, he's everything you want and go dirty with those tackles and just throwing down. I mean, he's a freak. Headway in that, or Will Hernandez, kid out of UTEP, his head coach when he was in school. I mean, the kid he's 300 plus pounds, and he ran, I think I put up 39 reps in the bench press, which was, if I'm not mistaken, and I know it was more than Quentin Nelson tackles. But not only that, in the drills, kid's got quick feet, and he's this. If you're getting compared to Richie Incognito, you're pretty mean dude.
I mean, it is what it is. To describe him in the interior of the line, but I would probably refrain from that. Now, we'll just pretend that wasn't said.
Yeah, we'll do that. So, some other ones. I can't remember his first name, but Askey. He was a safety out of Penn State. He can run. I mean, so we've got some guys that also in jump. So you got Leighton Vander S. I don't know how to say that last name, and Mike.
Oh yeah, showing you that white guys can jump, like you say, and then athleticism is white guy trait. He gets thrown around. Can't really be thrown around on these guys because the cat weighs what?
I mean, he's a big kid. He's 6'6".
250, 260, and that to me. Physics. Yeah. I took that class for about a week and then realized that wasn't going to work. And it's probably why, because I saw something like that and it's like, yeah, that happens, and how a guy can run like that, and we can go
6'5", some areas 6'6". Combine has him at 6'5", so we'll take the combine. 6'5" jump was 10 feet 9 inches. I mean, just end. It's just, like you said, these aren't sneaky athletes. These aren't the hard workers, the high motor guys. I mean, these are guys that are just freaks. They have got to places. I mean, this is just Gesicki, obviously, with Leighton Vander Esch. He ran a 4.6 with 39.5 inches, and then in his 3-cone and his 20-yard shuttle, they're freaky. I mean, they drew comparisons of this kid to Brian Urlacher. So obviously, if you're getting Yeah, the sneaky
Yeah.
athlete term can't be used for these guys. So, so those are some of the guys that we kind of felt again helped their draft stock, and we're tipping our cap there to those to the white boys that are jumping.
Let's do it.
Some other guys, and Taylor, I know you're pretty passionate about this one. Some guys who hurt their draft stock. One of the big guys, and I think one of the big disappointments. Granted, his tape is great; he does a great job, but granted, in the
He's
big
even got a quarterback vouching for him.
yeah, but in the Big 12, I mean, you don't really have much defense, so it's not that hard to be a decent offensive tackle. We got Orlando Brown out of Oklahoma. I mean, kid ran almost a 6-second 40, and he put up less than 20 reps on the bench. I mean, just terrible.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing. Why even come to the draft? You don't have to accept the invite. You could have just done your pro day and sat around on the bench and just talked to people the whole day. But in my mind, that he just completely cost himself top half of the first round draft first round into contracts, and I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know why he just thought he could just show up in a sack last year to his quarterback. That's a lot of credit to Baker Mayfield, quarterback outside of the pocket. But you interview and you don't get two first impressions. So shame on you, on yourself, because you're really just costing yourself. And guy that doesn't mind being lazy, doesn't mind coming. It'll be a team that'll take a chance on him, but will it pan out? I guess only time and
Offer
make
commentary.
assumptions and try to figure out what we think would happen. No, they are what they are. They're projections with just a little bit of background knowledge. The guy he ain't going to be making the money off the get that he should have made if he would have shown up to the pro. So,
yeah, it's interesting to see him on NFL.com. They're projecting him. They gave him a great combine, and that's projecting that he would be an instant starter. Like I said, tape. Taylor goes to Baker Mayfield, and a lot of it goes to the offense. The offensive coordinator, Baker Mayfield, and one of his downsides that he was more of kind of a nickel and dime type of guy, and he just had touchdown. I mean, so I'll be interested to see. I mean, he's got long arms, and people are saying, edge rushers in the Big 12 are nowhere near compared to edge rushers in the NFL. So enough about him. Some other guys that they didn't really kill themselves in the draft. Josh Jackson, the corner out of Iowa. I mean, coming into the combine, his tape routes, he has great route recognition, all these different types of things. I think I watched a game this year, a scoop and score on the other. I'm pretty sure I saw him score 2 touchdowns in a Big Ten conference game. And a lot of scouts, I think, kind of scared him off. So I still think he's in the second round. But before this, he was most people's number one corner coming into the draft. Another one that people want to talk about is Lamar Jackson. Didn't really kill himself again in the draft. I see that as interesting.
Yeah, I don't understand what you gain from that.
Yeah.
Not running the 40. I mean, I understand. And so, you just, in my opinion, the least amount that you can put on yourself gives yourself the best chance. You want to be, for lack of better terms, you want to be sexy to these GMs. You want them to like everything about you. And so to give them any reason or any doubt to not want to take the chance on you, I think you limit yourself. So, and it's something, I know a 40-yard dash is, for every position isn't the most applicable drill to, kind of label or to assess somebody's ability, but at the same time, you want to be able to show that you're willing to do what these guys ask you to do.
Well, yeah.
That's my take on that.
Not only that, but I mean, the kid's getting compared to Michael Vick, and I mean, Michael Vick himself said this kid is better than I was when I was coming out of college. So, I mean, like you said, kind of Michael Vick made himself so appealing. 40, I mean, he could flick the ball, like it was nothing, and it goes 60 yards. Obviously, I didn't love the fact that he didn't run that 40. Obviously, he's got his pro day, And then the last guy, and this is just kind of a sad story, just projecting him to be a guard at the next level. Tore his pec, partially tore his pec, first rounder, going to make himself a good bit of money. And now with a partially torn pec, who knows? I mean, he just had a bad injury at a bad time. So,
yeah, that's an unfortunate. Looking to land a job again, like I say, kind of going back to the job interview. I'm sure that the guy has already started to think about rehab, and but best wishes to him, and I hope for a speedy recovery.
It might not hurt him that bad, as bad as we think, because he is on tape. He is one of, so he might not slip too far, but if he slips out of the first round, and even if he goes in. And interesting to see where he'll go, especially with some teams, especially. So let's kind of, again, obviously, hoping that you get the right thing. We'll be able to, hopefully get some weeks and the weeks leading up to the draft after some more pro days and different types of things like that, seeing what shits are going. But let's move on to the AFC South. Obviously, we've got some
biased on this. Due to the fact that our church is a little more heavy to this area of the NFL of a certain team. We'll be upfront with that. We're not going to keep that a secret as a little bit of a warning. So we are going to be partial and have a little more coverage.
Yeah, and obviously we understand where we went after him. We've already thrown some shade at Blake Bortles, and we probably Jarrell Casey on that one, and some other guys, and Malik Jackson can say whatever he wants about them, the Titans' ass in the playoffs, but I mean they can keep telling themselves that when games, but they weren't in either of those games. I mean the fact
Go
that
back to your Shanties Jaguars,
Saxonville.
But we all know who won the AFC South minus the record. We sniff the smell of stardom, of greatness, and so we can only blame ourselves. So Jacksonville, enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, and it moves. As we say in Robinson, we trust. I think the hire of Mike Vrabel, love Mike Mularkey, love what he did for the team. I think he really put him in a good spot. The actual reason he got fired, but if it is, props to Mularkey. Some reports were changes to his staff, and he stuck by his guys. So speaks to his character.
Fortunate because the evidence and the incompetency was a big part of what kept the Titans from being able that they were on the cusp of. It's a shame to see him go. I think he did a best to this team, which we cannot repay him for. But that we've got a good chance to move forward from here. Approaches the season, and we'll kind of have to play it as we go because he's so
two-year coordinator in the NFL. So, but before we can obviously go into like Taylor mentioned, fans from the time they moved to Tennessee, and but luckily we're on the up. Like I said, in Robinson we trust. But let's go to the team that.
Yeah.
They got their quarterback. Team. What are they missing?
Really, they are solid. Around you obviously when you think of specifically the defensive line getting pressure on the quarterback, he does a lot of things. I don't know if you've seen tape on him or not, but he can really do. Along with him, you got guys like Jadeveon Clowney, who him and himself is a machine. So you got both those guys, and then you throw in a Whitney Merciless. You got a quarterback's nightmare. Across grades through there. I know they had a couple injuries last year. Dealt with a little bit. I know McKinney is wise. I think they're pretty set with Kevin Johnson still on his rookie contract. You also can remember the other corner across from him who's on another fairly inexpensive contract, but pretty solid through there. I'd say they could probably use some help in the backhand of the secondary, though. Some safeties, some good safeties in this draft that they could bring in. Also with that, I think O-line is another weakness. They lost Dwayne Brown last year mid-season to the Seahawks, or not the Seahawks. They brought in Dwayne Brown from the Seahawks, I'm sorry. They brought him in to try to fill the need.
No, they traded him.
They wanted to do what now?
You got it backwards. They did trade him.
They did trade him. Okay, so they traded Dwayne Casey away, or Dwayne Brown. I can't even get it right. So we're gonna have to definitely edit that.
Yeah,
Dwayne Brown to free agency. So go ahead, take it from me before I screw it up some more.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
I will say that the GM. One other thing I will say too. The GM, when they spoke with him, the big thing he stressed was they needed some speed, which I felt kind of a little odd, being that you brought in Will Fuller. You've got Lamar Miller, one of the fastest running backs when healthy in the league, and arguably one of the fastest wide receivers with Will Fuller. So I'm not sure what the speed aspect, maybe on the defensive side, that they're referring to. But that was something that did so. That was interesting.
It'll be interesting to see where they go as well, because you were mentioning obviously their secondary. They've got some free agents that they've got to figure out kind of what they're doing. Jonathan Joseph, who they have on their depth chart listed as their starting safety, their starting left corner. Their starting strong safety. Both those guys are free agents this year, so it'll be interesting to see what they see. Jonathan Joseph last year was getting paid $6.5 million. So they kind of got to figure that out. But yeah, I mean, I don't know where they're missing anything of speed. Like you said, I mean, you look at Deshaun Watson, and obviously, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better number one receiver to be drafted, to have on your team. The team, he's a freak.
Yeah, I saw a stat the other day of catches within 1 yard. That is a ballerina on the sidelines. He's Timmy two-touch. Amazing. In my opinion, right now, the best receiver in the league. He's got quarterbacks like T.J. Yates throwing to him.
And he's putting up killer numbers.
Wide receiver side, but you can't argue with this guy. I mean, he gets his jersey ripped and pulled, and
he's a freak. And to think about it, his quarterbacks, as bad as they've been, but thinking about their offensive line, like just an absurd amount of sacks. What's the number here? Fell. I mean, they did not give themselves any chance in regards to yards per carry and different types of things like that. They found a good running back in that O-line. Obviously, they've got a couple free agents from that interior O-line, and also their right tackle. So, with what's his name? I can't think of how to pronounce it. Julian something? What is it? Let's see. Yeah, Julian, maybe that left tackle of the future for them, but everywhere else on that offensive line, I mean, they just gave up sack after sack after sack, and it's first-round pick this year, so if they want to get one of those high-grade tackles, they're going to probably have to trade up, because a lot of those number 1 through 2 or 3 guys might not be there when they have, because the interior O-line is pretty thin with regards to free agents. Going to be asking for big dollars.
You touch on it. The technical upgrades that this team makes is going to have to be done via free agency. Make a move or two to get a couple pieces in place to shore up their team here, because when healthy, you look at guys like J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson. Those two guys right there are lashes, putting up the yards that he did in Seattle. And this is, something that's young. So this Texans team, in my opinion, is going to be the team to kind of.
J.J. Watt's had his fair share of trouble staying healthy. I'm pretty sure this isn't, not that he can't recover, but to see his durability, to see if he can take the hits and do all the things that he did. One of the things, too, is they've had a lot of trouble with health at tight end. I know C.J. Fedorowicz is they look to address in the draft or in free agency. You've got some good tight ends coming out. And another one, obviously, Jimmy Graham's a free agent. All depends on a price tag. I think that could be a guy. I mean, if he's on their team, you give him 2 bona fide Jimmy Graham. That's a scary team in the red zone, especially with a mobile quarterback. Scary team. Especially that defense. I mean, you can't argue that defense is concerned. Will probably be that defensive backfield to see what they can do to make some signings with some of their. They're going to have to start paying guys like Deshaun Watson, and if they want some good left tackles and some good guards, getting more and more expensive with the league evolving. What do you think? Where do you think they're going with that number 3 pick?
Blowing it for a Saquon Barkley at the third pick, they are doing. This Colts team is going to struggle. The health of Andrew Luck still up in the air. When I see it, I've worked in the physical therapy business. I know about the shoulder injury that he's going to know about. I mean, guys, may never come back after that. Guys may come back, never be the same. Odds are that it's going to be tough on him, and for him to be able. Where do the Colts go? You name it, they need it.
Yeah, it's a shame, and that organization is in shambles. If that happens, he's never had an offensive line in front of him, and this year wasn't any different. Obviously, with Jacoby Brissett, they had the third most quarterback hits, so obviously they've had trouble in pass protection. But then you look
predictable.
Yeah, well, and they didn't have great running backs back there. I know Mack is a guy that last year he had some trouble. But, they were just trying to plug anybody in at that tackle.
That work out for
it didn't. It was bad. It was bad. He's no Mike Vick. He's no Deshaun Watson, Marcus Mariota, any of those mobile quarterbacks. But he got sacked all those times. That's bad.
Yeah. I think they got a tough road ahead. I think this division is going to be cutthroat. Some decisions in that front office to bring in some guys because – the in question right now, I guess you could say. We'll see what happens with them. I think they make some moves. They're fairly, should I say, bakes this offseason. So they've got plenty of money to make some decisions, make some moves. They've already got pieces to fill this team. If that's the case, look out ball this year.
Yeah, it could easily go from being a laughingstock like it was last year to.
Yeah, we'll both agree with that. Yeah,
at the beginning of the season. So it'll be interesting. Like you said, there's not many areas where they don't need. They've got linebackers that are free agents. They've got defensive backfield. They've got receivers.
Two positions pretty well nailed, or as they say, nailed. So we'll see what happens. And so. That being said, those two positions would be the only position I would say they could not.
Let's kind of switch our train of thought here. Obviously, we're going from a team that has a lot of needs to be.
You saw the success they had, and you saw what that gave them. They had the best statistic defense in the passer, like they're able to do with middle pressure with Malik Jackson. The sides with.
Calais
the
Campbell
kid who came back from injury, really a big presence, but I'm thinking Dante Fowler.
Yeah, Yannick Ngakoue.
Guys that finally in football shape, ready to contribute, and you saw what they were able to do. And then you put two linebackers of the caliber of Telvin Smith and Paul Postlowski behind them, and you see what you get in the secondary. Again, you can sit here and say all these guys because they're all Pro Bowlers, so everybody knows who they are. But they're going to be back. There's really no key pieces leaving this. Postlowski, I know he's leaving for free agency. They obviously are losing some Allen Robinson there, and weren't there this year for the most part of their season. So. For them to be able to be successful again, and they've proved the fact that they got a noodle-armed Blake Bortles throwing the ball 10 yards out of bounds. That being said,
definitely, like you said, they're losing guys in that middle of that Postlowski, but great depth at the interior. The inside linebacker position. So the only place I could really see them needing something is they need a number one wide receiver, and obviously Allen Robinson. Depending on the paycheck that he wants, that might be tough for the Jaguars. Obviously, be smart because if they want to keep this defense together with guys like Calais Campbell, Malik still on a rookie contract, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't even making $1 million last year. You got guys that made huge impacts all over the field. And they're going to need to get paid. So the Jaguars have got to keep that defense together because, like you said, that was the best defense in the league, especially run defense. But then they made a great acquisition of Marcel Darius from the Bills to line.
And they did what you have to do. They went out and spent for these guys. You're looking a year paying Darius a little more, almost to the $16 million range. So they're paying out, but Tashawn Gibson, their safety, they paid $7.2 million. So they're able to get a Ramsey on a rookie contract. They were able to get a Miles Jack on a rookie contract. So to make a team competitive for it to kind of follow suit as far as attacking free agency and building before the draft and using the draft to develop talent. So that's the game plan. I know everybody will tell you that, but it doesn't look like that as a fan from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this team is, I mean, the one thing I can hang my hat, talks in the offseason were that, depending on what was going on with the Giants, Tom Coughlin, obviously, with ties to Cousins, lots of different things. But luckily, the Jaguars front office, if you want to call Blake Bortles a game manager, then I think that's a really nice cause. I'll be part of the cheerleading squad that throws the footballs into the stands. People in the head on the sideline that aren't paying attention because that's where his throws go.
I mean, ask Allen Robinson how good of a quarterback came into the league, and you'll see and hear that side that so.
Well, yeah, and not only that, I mean, it's just we're going to point. Oh, well, look at his numbers towards the end of the year. You know, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. He didn't inhibit them too much at the end of the season. He was not. You take Bortles off that team still goes where they go.
Oh, without a doubt. As we said, we're not going to lie. Diehard Titans fans. Yeah, tighten up right. In the last couple of days is the release of DeMarco Murray. After he came over from Philadelphia, they restructured his deal. Team decided not to go with and beat writer that follows the Titans. That is in love with Derrick Henry and wants to, ride it in Kansas City. Derrick Henry played out of his mind. I mean,
Came through there, but then again, you saw the other side of Derrick Henry in the Patriots game.
You want to grade players based on what they did, and obviously he didn't have a great game, but Mike Mularkey running a lot of these play-action two-man routes, it wasn't that dangerous for teams to stack the box. The amount of his run plays, the percentage of 8-man boxes that he had was so. I mean, you can't really blame him for that, but it'll be interesting. So, where do you think, like David Fluellen? I know they drafted the Mohammed kid out of Cal last
season. That's a tough one. I hope that they make this season. I think. We're looking for a good third down change of pace back, a good complement back. Some backs are willing to take on that role, some course, and be a 3-down back, which is very rare in the league this year. So, agency, I think a guy like Jerick McKinnon would be a great pickup. I think he fills those needs to do that. I know he's leaving a good situation in Minnesota earlier coming up, and then also having that Latavius Murray type back, that would be what the Titans could use him for. Later on in the draft, we could find a running back late rounds. Some other options in free agency that I would probably go before that. I mean, even a Dion Lewis and a Rex, would look like. That would be what I would think.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on cap space and what they're willing to do with regards to their contracts. Jaguars, they've got to pay guys like Taylor Lewan, they've got to pay Marcus Mariota and Derrick Henry within the next.
The money for Jarrell Casey like they did, paying him beforehand, and making that's something that they will have to keep in mind. Yes, I agree, and that's where the general man. That's the name of the game. That's what they love to do. So they don't want to have to make, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So you can take a gamble on the draft. You never really know what's going to happen, different types of things like that. But Jerick McKinnon obviously is a free agent, and he's expressed his interest to be that workhorse back. So, here's Derrick Henry. We're not going to make you just a third down back. We'll use you in different. Get that guy at the right price. That would give the Titans a big boost in that backfield. It's more than a couple years ago. They had the quote-unquote smash and dash with Lindell White, put you in the rearview mirror and take off. So I think that would probably be one of their best backfields since those short yardage touchdowns and those, third and short, fourth and short, first down.
You get to the Bell levels, you get to the levels of guys like Todd Gurley. So you kind of have to approach it with that two-back mentality. It works better nowadays. Fantasy-wise, back as far as winning football games is almost essential. You see the Patriots for. It's something that the NFL is coming to. Well, and to have situational guys, that's the new day and age. And so we'll see if the league just occasional Bell and Gurley type backs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because you mentioned running backs. I think that one, I mean, you look at a guy like Derrick Henry who was able to do a lot of wear and tear. I mean, he didn't have a ton of carries, so he was fresh come December when Derrick Henry, who may as well be, an edge rusher, he's that freaking big. So not being super overspending in free agency throughout the playoffs and in the Super Bowl and throughout the season as well in the passing game. I mean, need to address this, but whether it's through the draft or through the free agent market, I think they're mentioned before. Kamara and Kareem Hunt were 3rd round, 4th round picks. Some of those running backs, I know one that we mentioned before is Kerryon Johnson. I think University of Miami as well, who the Titans were reported to have met with at the combine. I think I think running back, I mean, obviously it's kind of one of those big kind of buzzword positions a lot of places, and I don't expect them to take a step back at all in that regard with the running back. The big question, obviously, the Titans have some big needs in the draft with line, but the big need for the Titans in the draft is rushing the quarterback. Obviously, 25, I may as well go out and buy as many scratch-offs as I can because that would be the luckiest day
people fell asleep on the clock, and then the Titans just magically slipped something in the drink, so they're luck with that.
Yeah, so obviously that's not going to happen. Obviously, a lot of teams for the Titans in the last couple years, obviously with guys like Arakpo and Derek Morgan, they're not the same force that they were. Obviously, Arakpo when he was in Washington was a free. Yeah. And so that's one of those areas I see a lot of stuff saying the Titans was a stud breakout year 2 years ago, and last year had a lot of trouble with injuries, tangibles that you want in a guy like that. I know he's a pretty popular pick in a lot of these mock drafts. Andrew, do you think they go edge rusher for sure? What are your thoughts with that pick at 25?
Market, that'll tell us a lot about where John Robinson's at, kind of where his 3 weeks there. Through that combine and before that, and now going there where their needs are, and I agree with you. I think it's pass rusher out there as well. So that they're kind of in a position. You make a trade. Do you do the John Robinson special and make that move? A more prime time pass rusher to fit this new. The obvious need, free agency, like I said, will be the big decider, but if not, in that first round spot.
Yeah, I'd love to see him address the defense on what happens with Avery Williamson, obviously being a free agent this year. But, though, is cornerback. Obviously, there's some good cornerbacks in this draft. You might be able to snag one in a left to do if you go there. But the Titans, I think they would love, especially with Logan Ryan, to slide over into the slot because I think he's shown that he's very seasoned. He had some good games later. So I'm curious to see. They've got some guys that prove themselves, in the few chances they had to. But they're getting rid of Bryce McCain, who I've always worried in the slot was just going to give up touchdown. Isaiah Oliver, if I'm not mistaken, out of Colorado, a longer.
Cornerback is definitely a need, but do you pay $10 million to a nickel? The chance to be that second corner. I know he likes to get into that slot, and with Adoree, helping him out. I think if we go draft, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump your gun and segue in and say that I think this is the one need that options out there. You got guys like a Malcolm Butler or Rashad Breeland, or even are going to be huge upgrades from what we've seen over the last 5 years. Play at a guy of that caliber and make that splash that I was speaking Gibson, and then also obviously AJ Bouye. So in that window right now of these guys that we have into their prime, so make the moves now. I think that would be a good position to
have made trades for Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. And if you haven't seen it is something else. But but I mean, I think it's just going to show with him up in free agency. it just goes to show you can't rely on that defensive backfield. You've got to have studs. I mean, the Titans, like you said, on price, but I think they can definitely make a big splash. And obviously, they didn't give up overs in that defensive backfield. So I think that's a big area that they can address. Obviously, there's a lot of the Titans don't have many free agents, and he's kind of the big one on the defensive side of the ball. But on the offensive side, you've got both aren't extremely worried about him.
They'll bring him back. He'll be back with the team.
Yeah.
Spain, I don't spend all the dollar signs, but he will be back next year.
But like I mentioned before, I think this draft, if there's one position that it's deep at, obviously you've got guys like Quentin Nelson, who, again, barring a miracle, will not fall to Iowa, who had a great combine. You've got guys like Austin Combine, Isaiah Wynn, who was an undersized tackle at Georgia, who a lot of people are slotting in a good on the defensive side that they feel like there's an offensive guard that they can't pass up. I think the Titans easily get a solid guard that you could plug and play for Josh Klein somewhere in that second to third. The one worry is that it is a position that I feel like a lot of teams, especially in the AFC South, are lacking. Robinson does, and how long he decides to wait before he addresses the guard. Like I said, that are in free agency are supposedly already, the bigger names are already signing deals. So it'll be interesting to see where the Titans go. So, I mean, we've obviously done a fairly extensive talk on the Titans. If there's any team, we're not going to throw shade at the Texans or at the Colts. Those are pretty. You're
being nice.
I am.
Yes, there will be shade thrown both of those way.
Yeah, it's almost always going to be the Jaguars. I feel like that organization with Blake Bortles, they're just not the cocky, swaggy type of guys.
They're acting like idiots.
Yeah.
They lose their mind. Yeah, we get what you mean. We feel what you
Free
mean.
agency starts this week. Be on the lookout. We will look to kind of start to report at the beginning how things start to shake out, some of the potential impacts of the draft, and also defense and at the interior of the O-line.
Quarterback receiver.
Yeah. So, but that's all we've got for today. Be sure to be on the lookout for more. Not be the normal idiots on your normal sports podcast where they just talk, but you can probably guess that most of them work at FS1 or ESPN. Have a good night, everybody. Like we said, be on the lookout for some upcoming podcasts about free agency. Signing off here, we got Cameron and Taylor.
Yes, episode 1 we made it. Are you nervous? Are you feeling better now? Do you feel like it went well?
Yeah, I needed a water about 5 minutes in, but we'll make it work. Well, we've obviously got some room to grow, but
it's a rookie mistake there. But you can grow from that mistake, though. It's not debilitating. You'll be back next week, though, right?
Yeah, we'll be back. Don't you worry. So be sure to stay tuned for, again, sports news and all that good stuff without the idiots. So we'll catch you guys later.
Signing off.